The National Desk, America's News, now.
The late spring heat wave turns deadly as records continue to fall across the Southwest.
For the fortunate heirs of the legacy of these heroes, those who scaled the cliffs of Point to Hawk, must also be the keepers of their mission.
Like President Reagan 40 years ago, Biden recalls the boys of Point to Hawk. But was this message more about November than Normandy? And then an update on the condition of B.J. Thompson, the 27-year-old football player who suffered cardiac arrest in the middle of practice. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. For the fourth day in a row, a heat dome covers much of the Southwest. Nearly 30 million people. They remain under heat alerts with major warnings in parts of California, Nevada, New Mexico, as well as Texas. All-time daily highs were set yesterday in Death Valley at 122 degrees, as well as in Phoenix that hit 113. Las Vegas also shattering records yesterday. The city recorded their earliest 111-degree day on record. This comes as New Mexico officials say at least 6 people have died this week due to the excessive heat. The people are believed to be migrants crossing across the border. Right now, millions of people are at risk for severe thunderstorms in parts of the Central Plains through tomorrow morning. Damaging winds, large hail are the main threats, but tornadoes are also possible. Parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri could also get flash flooding as you look right here. Showers and thunderstorms are forecast in parts of the southeast through Sunday. President Joe Biden emulates the words and symbolism of President Ronald Reagan from 40 years ago as he spoke today at Point to Hawk. 80 years after Army Rangers scaled the seaside cliffs as a part of the D-Day invasion, President Biden called on Americans to keep defending democracy like those Rangers once did. In 1984, from the same spot, Reagan drew parallels between Nazi Germany's tyranny and the Cold War struggle against the Soviet Union. Today, Biden draws the same parallels amid 2 grueling wars, one in Europe, the other in the Middle East.
They're not asking us to do their job. They're asking us to do our job, to protect freedom in our time, to defend democracy, to stand up aggression abroad and at home.
Biden's speech makes a play for Republicans who hail Reagan and prefer his foreign policy over former President Donald Trump's America First policy. He also points to Trump's claims the 2020 election was stolen, arguing this poses as much of a threat to democracy as foreign adversaries do. President Biden also met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky as the war with Russia continues. Biden apologized to Zelensky for the recent holdup in approving Ukrainian aid in Congress. He also reaffirmed America will continue to support Ukraine against Russia.
You haven't bowed down. You haven't yielded at all. You continue to fight in a way that is just remarkable. Just remarkable. And we're not going to walk away from you.
Back in April, Biden signed into law a $61 billion military aid package for Ukraine. Here's the schedule of events over the next few days. Tomorrow, the president will be honored by French President Macron with a state visit, including a military parade and banquet. The two will also hold talks on strengthening trade, security, and cooperation for the upcoming Paris Summer Olympics before the president heads back to Washington on Sunday. The first week of the federal gun trial against Hunter Biden has concluded. The defense began to make their case today and is expected to wrap up on Monday or Tuesday next week. Today's session ending on an emotional note following testimony from Hunter Biden's daughter, Naomi. Christine Frizzell breaks down what we learned.
The government has now rested its case against Hunter Biden. Prosecutors presenting 10 witnesses in 5 days, including 3 who had been romantically involved with him, including Hallie Biden, who had been married to his late brother Beau and later dated Hunter. Their text messages in the days following the gun purchase, in which he tells her he had been sleeping on a car and smoking crack, also submitted as evidence, as well as surveillance video of Hallie Biden disposing of the gun in a grocery store parking lot trash can after she found it in his car.
The Hunter Biden legal team wants to say, hey, look, he only had the gun for 11 days. I expect the prosecution, though, in close will say, well, you only had it for 11 days because Hallie Biden threw it away. We don't know if you ever would have gotten rid of the gun while you were on drugs.
The crux of the case, though, centers on whether Hunter Biden knowingly lied on this application about using or being addicted to drugs at the time. His defense team seeking to muddy the waters and cast reasonable doubt, calling an employee at the gun store who acknowledged there was something wrong with the ATF application, but did not give specifics about what. An emotional Naomi Biden also took the stand. Hunter Biden's daughter telling the jury she had visited her father while he was in a California rehab facility in late summer 2018, where she said he seemed like the clearest he had been since her uncle Beau died, adding, he seemed really great. Also testifying she'd seen him in New York on October 18, 2018, and that he still seemed good, though text messages between her and her father showed her frustrated with his behavior. That date's significant because he bought the gun on October 12th and had it until it was thrown away on October 23rd.
The defense team seems to be honing in on literally saying the day that he bought the gun, that the government hasn't proven that he was using drugs that day.
Day 5 of the case wrapped up earlier than usual. Defense attorneys saying President Biden's brother James would not be called to testify after all. But they are still deciding on one final factor, whether Hunter Biden himself will take the stand. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National Desk.
A 27-year-old NYPD officer is facing attempted murder charges stemming from a road rage shooting last month in New Jersey. Hugh Tran waived extradition at a hearing today to be placed in New Jersey custody after being arrested last night. New Jersey officials say Tran used his department-issued weapon to shoot a man following a multi-car accident and that they have video and ballistic evidence to prove it. The victim is alive and remains in hospital care recovering from his injuries. Louisiana police are asking for the public's help finding an inmate who escaped from jail over the Memorial Day weekend. Jamarcus Cyprian, who you see right here, we are working to pull up that image. There you go. Police offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to Cyprian's arrest. He was one of 4 inmates who escaped by breaking through a compromised part of the chain link fencing, crawled under a wall gap, we're told, and scaled a razor wire fence. The other 3 escapees have been caught. New York and Virginia authorities are setting up the extradition of triple murder suspect Alyssa Venable. The 23-year-old, who is currently in a county jail, was arrested last night in New York following a car chase that exceeded 100 miles per hour. Police disabled her car with tire deflation devices. She's accused of killing her 3 roommates, all of whom were in their 60s and 70s. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas spoke out today in favor of President Biden's controversial executive order issued earlier this week. The action that has received backlash from both Democrats and Republicans for different reasons aims to streamline the asylum process in an effort to decrease the number of migrants attempting to enter the country unlawfully.
We have not eliminated asylum. We are allowing between 1,400 and 1,500 individuals to use our processes, the CBP-1 application, to come to a port of entry at a pre-designated appointed time and claim asylum in a safe, orderly, and lawful way.
This comes one day after Texas officials found 26 migrants hiding beneath a flatbed truck in Bexar County. 11 people were rushed to the hospital. At least 7 people were arrested. Investigators are continuing to find where the migrants came from and which cartel is responsible for taking them across the border. In Webb County, Texas, troopers stopped 2 trucks and found 19 illegal migrants from Mexico crammed into the cab areas, one suffering from heat exhaustion. Both drivers were charged with smuggling, and Border Patrol now has all 19 migrants in custody. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke at a campaign event in Landover, Maryland, advocating for more laws cracking down on gun violence in the U.S. But she said it is a false choice to say being for stricter gun control is the same trying to take everyone's rights to bear arms away.
I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, and we need an assault weapons ban. I support the Second Amendment, and we need universal background checks.
The vice president also says she supports red flag laws that prohibit people who are seen as a danger to themselves or others from owning a firearm. Meantime, the Supreme Court is currently reviewing the constitutionality of a law that bars domestic violence abusers from possessing guns.
It's just very shocking to get a letter from a company you've never even heard of saying your information has been taken.
Thousands of people are receiving letters saying their personal information may have been hacked. Prospect Medical and the law firm Kirkland & Ellis said there was a data breach, but didn't explain why or how they had people's information. Kirkland & Ellis mentioned it was using the third-party software MoveIt. A cyber expert said these types of attacks are common and recommends changing passwords and enabling multi-factor authentication. A Minnesota jury has convicted 5 of 7 people of stealing more than $40 million in COVID-19 relief money from a child nutrition program. 2 were acquitted. 55 other defendants are still awaiting trial in a connected fraud scheme that totals more than $250 million. This particular case received further national attention this week when a former juror turned over $120,000 in cash to authorities that was given to them to acquit the defendants. That juror, along with another who heard about the bribery attempt, were replaced before deliberations began on Tuesday. The investigation into who is behind the attempted bribe is ongoing. Coming up next year, how many new jobs is too many? Why the latest blowout jobs report is not what economists want to see. Then why hundreds of thousands of packages of cream cheese are being recalled and which brands are affected. Later, we investigate whether billions of dollars in opioid settlement money is actually making a difference as frustration grows over lack of transparency. We'll be right back. Today's jobs report out, and the U.S. added 272,000 jobs last month, far more than economists were expecting. But it's not all good news. It could mean that the Federal Reserve keeps interest rates higher for longer, hoping it slows the economy and lowers inflation. National correspondent Atra Al-Nashar has more from Washington.
In normal times, a blowout jobs report would be cause for celebration. But in this time of high inflation, good news is bad news. Stocks initially slipped on May's job gains as investors fear the still red-hot job market will give the Federal Reserve license to delay their first interest rate cut since the pandemic.
Well, these high interest rates are hurting businesses. They're holding back investments.
Healthcare, government, leisure, and hospitality are some of the sectors seeing the most job growth. However, the Fed may be encouraged by the unemployment rate rising slightly to 4%, breaking a 27-month streak of unemployment below 4%.
That increase in unemployment was almost entirely driven by young workers I was expecting to see the employment rate for teens and for new grads actually go up because they've been rising all year, but they dropped quite dramatically.
That may suggest a slower summer hiring season than what we'd normally see for that age group.
And that could be because employers are so concerned about the future and there's so much uncertainty and they're not prepared to make investments training new talent.
The good news that actually is good news is overall, it's a great time to look for a job in the United States. And according to the Labor Department, average hourly earnings continue to rise, up another 14 cents in May to $34.91 an hour, a sign employers may feel the need to compete for staff. Wages have outpaced inflation, but for many it doesn't feel like it, after 3 years of prices rising at a pace far faster than the Fed's 2% standard. The latest inflation reading is 2.7%. When the Fed meets again next week, Chair Jerome Powell is expected to say, once again, they haven't seen enough progress yet to declare mission accomplished and lower those painfully high interest rates. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar reporting.
The United Nations Secretary General said that an upcoming Security Council report will list both Israel and Hamas as violators of children's rights. The report is expected in a few weeks and will say that both parties have killed and maimed children in attacks on schools and hospitals. Israel's UN ambassador rebuked the decision in a call with the secretary's office, saying it gives aid and comfort to terrorism.
And now Hamas will continue even more to use schools and hospitals, because this decision, shameful decision of the Secretary General, will only give Hamas hope to survive and will only extend the war and extend the suffering.
Meantime, the official IDF X account posted this photo today claiming they hit another UN facility operating as an UNRWA school, this one in northern Gaza. The IDF says they took out a cell of Hamas terror targets inside of it. This comes one day after Israel hit an UNRWA school in central Gaza, claiming to kill up to 20 Hamas terrorists. Israel says this is the 6th school with a Hamas compound they have hit in the last month alone. The U.S.-built pier to deliver aid to Gaza is now reconnected to the beach, and the military expects it to start using it again in the next few days. A U.S. Central Command official said American troops repaired the pier this morning after it was damaged by a storm in late May. The officials said the goal is to carry 1 million pounds of food and supplies through the pier every 2 days. New developments. Kansas City Chiefs defensive end B.J. Thompson is awake and responsive in the hospital. That is according to his agent. Thompson suffered a seizure yesterday at practice, causing him to go into cardiac arrest. He had remained unconscious into last night. No reason was given for the health scare. Thompson's agent says his prognosis is good. Over 800,000 packages of cream cheese made by Schreiber Foods, Inc. have been recalled because of possible salmonella. The recall includes several major brands like Kroger and Dunkin'. The cream cheese was sold in 19 states. If you bought any of these affected products, you should throw them away or bring them back for a refund. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America. War veterans in Chico, California are marking the anniversary of D-Day, which was yesterday. Bob Mulholland is a delegate of the Vietnam Veterans Association. He hung the American, English, and French flags to commemorate the Allied operations between the nations, which ultimately freed parts of Europe. Mulholland was a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne in Vietnam. You can see him holding an original 101st World War II airborne flag.
It just meant a lot to me that Britain, Canada, France, America all joined together. And listening to President Biden talking about how that day saved the world. And I thought, it's a somber day, but a joyous day.
He reminds us to thank and honor the World War II veterans who are still around for the service they gave to this country.
So we have a 300-gallon tank here, and we can just open up this valve and let the dripper line start to it'll fill up the tube and just start dripping out.
Brian Hohensee is a Christmas tree farmer in Eagle Creek. He installed a new drip system this year to water his trees during periods of less rainfall. Hohensee, like many Oregon farmers, is changing irrigation techniques to adapt to a warmer, drier climate. To preserve resources, the state is proposing new rules that could make groundwater rights harder to get. The Oregon Farm Bureau says they're concerned about the impact on business since agriculture makes up such a large part of the state's economy.
In Grace Harbor and Willapa Bay, danger signs can be spotted warning people about toxic shellfish.
This is kind of unusual how fast and aggressive the growth was, how fast the toxins increased.
The Washington State Department of Health said they found high levels of paralytic shellfish poison, which is a natural marine biotoxin in shellfish along the coast. This is impacting both recreational and commercial harvesting, something health officials are calling a dangerous threat. Health officials say certain shellfish that was commercially harvested from Willapa Bay between May 26th through the 30th have been recalled. They add that after extensive testing that was made, shellfish at restaurants and stores are safe to eat.
Coming up next, after 3 years, many states still won't say how they're spending billions of dollars in opioid settlement money. A closer look at the ongoing problem after the break. With more than 100,000 people continue to die every year due to drug overdoses, Spotlight on America is tracking whether billions of dollars in national opioid settlement money is making a difference. It's been 3 years since the settlement was reached, and national investigative correspondent Andrew Moreski is finding many states still won't say how they're spending the money, leaving many frustrated by the lack of transparency.
Do you need any Narcan?
From funding harm reduction services in Michigan to funding law enforcement in Louisiana, billions of dollars are going to a wide variety of purposes nationwide that are supposed to fight the opioid epidemic. But while more states are promising to report their spending, 3 years into the process, it's still difficult in many cases to find out exactly who is getting the money, how much, and for what.
Has this money helped yet?
It's hard to say because of that lack of transparency.
Opioid Policy Institute Executive Director Jonathan Stoltman is frustrated by the lack of transparency and accountability, especially since more than 100,000 people have continued to die of overdoses every year since the settlement was reached in 2021.
We're wasting time. We know that people are dying from this every single day.
Families who've lost loved ones to substance abuse march on Washington every year for the National Trail of Truth, demanding more resources for treatment and recovery. And now they've added calls for more accountability for opioid spending.
It is on the deaths of our kids that these funds were acquired.
Alexis Plus founded Truth Farm, to help fight the opioid epidemic after her son Jeff died of an overdose in 2014. She is frustrated by the lack of progress.
They can't say the funds aren't there anymore. The funds are there.
I think accountability here is essential.
New York Congressman Paul Tonko wants to see more federal oversight. He is among a group of Democratic Congress members who sent this letter urging the Biden administration to closely track opioid settlement fund spending to ensure populations in need of additional support receive it.
We want to make certain that there's no waste.
Tonko says it's imperative to know where settlement money is going to help coordinate billions in federal dollars also being spent to battle the epidemic.
I do share the concerns.
Even Dr. Raul Gupta, head of the National Drug Control Policy Office, told Spotlight on America he believes more needs to be done to monitor settlement spending. But Gupta wrote back to lawmakers saying he doesn't have authority from Congress to require states to publicly report.
So should the federal government tie some of the grant dollars that it gives to states to reporting on the settlement funding? Do we need to pass a new law?
We may.
The settlement agreement calls for 85% of the money to be spent on evidence-based solutions like treatment, prevention, harm reduction, and education. But for now, with no reporting requirements, actually doing it is on the honor system.
State and local governments are expected to get nearly $60 billion in opioid settlement money over the next 15 years. We'll keep pushing for more transparency. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Coming up, Pat Sajak is hosting his last Wheel of Fortune tonight after more than 8,000 episodes. Who's taking his place with Vanna White right after this. It is the end of an era for Wheel of Fortune fans. Host Pat Sajak is retiring from his role. His last show is tonight. He has been on the show for 41 seasons now and been on more than 8,000 episodes. Ryan Seacrest is set to be the next host. Vanna White will co-host with Seacrest through the 2025 to 2026 season. What a run. We wish him the best of luck. And that is going to do it for us. For this edition of the National Desk, we invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Check the local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.